Ministries slashed, major welfare changes, calls for a minister to go and politicians scrambling to take credit for the OCR cut. Must be time for our political week in review with chief political correspondent Tova O'Brien and with her this week political reporter Glenn McConnell. Tova, more benefit sanctions announced this week. How have they gone down?
Yeah, Laura, this is the government's new sanctions regime. It's traffic light system for beneficiaries who don't uphold their work obligations. And they announced a couple of new sanctions in there as well, including this money card that prevents people from buying alcohol or cigarettes. Where it came a bit unstuck was when we asked the minister how many people were likely to be booted off the benefit entirely as a result of these changes, and she couldn't say what happened to those people, where they went, and she included sole parents in there, so households with children, and that was before having to issue a correction on that. So sloppy is one way that these welfare changes have gone down, perhaps lacking a bit of heart as well, given the enormity of the consequences for some people. But ultimately, politically, this is populist policy, so the National Party, the ACT Party, they're not going to lose any votes as a result of these changes.
And Glenn, you broke the stories on two government departments slashed this week. What's happening with them?
Yeah, back when Labour was in government, they beefed up Te Arawhiti and Whaikaha. Te Arawhiti was meant to be going around the country forming partnerships with iwi. Whaikaha was meant to be leading a new approach to disability services, one led by and for disabled communities. But those ministries are being stripped right back. Louise Upston, the Minister for Disability Services, says it's going to be much better for the communities they serve. But I've been talking to those communities and there is a lot of anger about how the government has handled this.
And I think adding to that as well, Laura, with this fiery treaty, the Waitangi Tribunal decision around the Treaty Principles Bill, we can expect probably more anger, more division on this to come.
Yes, and Tova, huge news this week, the OCR cut. The government was really quick to take credit for that. What does the Reserve Bank's decision mean politically?
Yeah, it sure was. It took about 10 minutes for the National Party to claim credit after the Reserve Bank governor cut the OCR. It took the ACT Party not much longer. It was about 16 minutes until they put out a press release, and there's good reason for this. Governments gain when people feel flush, and that certainly hasn't been the case during this achingly long cost of living crisis. Conservative parties as well, they do particularly well on all things economy related, which is perhaps why it took Labour more than 2.5 hours to respond to the OCR, and not just highlighting the good but also the bad, things like rising unemployment and the fact that the economy has slowed as well.
Crucially though, do people actually feel like the cost of living crisis is getting better? With the price of electricity skyrocketing in recent weeks, that could lead on to cost increases for pretty much everything. Bad news for the government and also bad news for all of us.
OK, Glenn, ACT Party Minister Nicole McKee's having a row with police. Where's that headed?
Yeah, the Police Association want her to stand aside from firearm reform. They want Mark Mitchell, the Police Minister, to take over. That's because the Police Association, led by Chris Cahill, say they've been frozen out of firearm reform meetings. The Minister, though, says they need to chill out pretty much. She said the President, Cahill, is paranoid and that he can submit, like everybody else, when it goes to Select Committee.
And this is ugly as well, right? McKee can say that firearms owners weren't properly consulted during that first wave of firearms reforms, and remember that happened in the wake of March 15, so the sentiment in the country was very different then. But picking a fight with police, really, when the government's just gone through arbitration with them over pay negotiations, when law and order and gang crackdowns are so central to this government's policy, you'd think they might want to pick their battles a little better.
Well, it's been a huge week and no doubt we will have another big week in politics also. Thanks so much, Tova O'Brien and Glenn McConnell.